My name is Jos Smolders, and this is Thursday Afternoon Talks, a series of weekly discussions I have with Frans de Waard about an album, an artist, a label, a genre, or another something musical. Today we have a special episode. We do an interview with our friend and colleague Roel Meelkop. Roel is a Dutch composer, and Frans and I know him already since the 1980s. We've played together a lot. Roel recently released an album called Rest in Space, and the music on the album is quite different from what he has been making during the past years. Roel has always been on the borders of arts and music. So he was formerly trained as an artist, as a painter, I believe, but he has always been making electronic music since the 1980s. First with self-released cassettes. He has been part of THU20, Kapotte Muziek, Groen. He's played solo. He's been part of Death Pact in the 1990s. He's been quite prolific. If you look at his website, you can see that he's been always producing live and recording material. We thought it would be interesting to have a talk with Roel about his music, his ideas, his plans, and about the album. Roel, welcome to the show. This is the first time that we do an interview in Thursday afternoon talks. So welcome, and you released an album a couple of weeks ago, Rest in Space.
Yes.
The design of the cover gives an indication about the theme of the album. Can you tell a bit about this album? Because it has a very specific theme and also I think a reason to start the music, to start composing this.
Yeah. As the liner notes of the CD explain, it's basically a work that has been on my mind for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a work that deals with loss of loved ones, which was funnily enough triggered by the loss of one of our cats, which doesn't seem like a big deal, but somehow it was, and it triggered other losses I had. And very soon afterwards, I lost another dear person. And then it sort of came into
it started rolling, as it were.
Yeah, it started rolling. So it had been on my mind for a long time. Of course, basically, it's not rest in peace; it's rest in space.
Mm-hmm.
It's my pun on peaceful resting when you're dead is something I cannot understand, and I can imagine that we all are made of space dust, or space particles.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So I think we will return there somewhere.
Yeah.
Sometime.
Uh-huh.
So actually, it's my requiem, of course.
Yeah.
I think every composer of any stature has made something like this in their lives. And I thought, as a composer of my stature, I should do the same. So I did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. And so when it was a clear decision to start this project. I think that when I listen to the music, to the sounds, in a sense, it's different from the works that you have made in the past years. The similarity to me is that it has the same kind of contemplativeness. It's contemplative music. But sonically, it's much more spacious and open than your previous works. What was that a conscious decision that you made?
Difficult to say. This work is really something that kind of happened, and I let it happen more than I do with probably other music in which I cut in the flow of things because I think I should be doing something at some point. And in this work, I laid back more and let the sounds develop and go on and get into, and then the flow that I was talking about just now also is mediated through the music, I think. So it's I think these kinds of sounds and this kind of flow is basically always there in my music, but it's always I don't know, countered with other interests that I have and impatience maybe, or I don't know. And in this case, I just let it flow. The rest in space is also probably the spaciousness of the music.
Absolutely, yeah. That was my my association anyway. But when you start it, when you start a project like this, then you start collecting sounds and you start thinking about. Like for instance, in your previous CDs that I've listened in the past few days, what often happens is that there is you start with a very low rumble, or it is there is like the sound of a field recording, but nothing really is happening, and then things start building up. And here you have a very clearly defined sound. So I think you also have a clearly defined sound source and instrumentation. Mm-hmm. Can you tell something about that?
Well, it's true. The whole piece is basically a very simple recording of. I don't know if you know those. I have these bell cymbals. Mm-hmm. So they're very small cymbals with and it's more bell than
curve,
cymbal.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
So they have more a bell sound than a cymbal sound, but they're still cymbals.
Right.
And I've got a couple of those, and I just started recording them, and I started playing with those sounds, and what you hear now is basically those recorded sounds stretched very, very long. The stretching also causes a spaciousness to appear in the sounds.
Right.
It happens.
It comes with the algorithm. Yeah.
It comes with the algorithm. Comes with territory. And this created the flow that I was probably looking for. I wasn't really aware of that at the time, but working on this material, I discovered that this would be the right stuff to use for this work.
All right.
So this is not like a very conscious beginning up front. Okay, I'm going to make it my requiem or whatever. Mm-hmm. It's more that the circumstances, having lost some dear ones, and then working on these sounds sort of got together, maybe randomly or maybe unconsciously, I don't know. Mm-hmm. But this created the momentum for this to happen. Yeah. And then I went with the flow.
Yeah. So
very corny, but that's what it is. I let it happen.
You let it happen. Yes. Right.
Yes.
So, but choosing the bell sounds, is of course also used in rituals, and so. Yeah.
The bell has a long history of use in religion, in rituals,
exactly,
in healing as well.
Yeah.
So probably it's it's not very strange that this was the sound that I could use very well in this project. Yeah. It's pretty obvious, maybe. Yeah. There's nothing really. Yeah.
Did you also look for inspiration in other requiems, like the traditional ones? For instance, the structure of a requiem?
No. Okay. It's a very long time ago. I guess about 20 years ago, I was digging a bit into requiems, because I already was interested in them then, and I was already thinking about I will do one myself at one point, but it was never the right moment until now.
Yeah.
So I didn't listen to anything recently relating to the subject. No. Nothing at all, really, because this thing happened, and I just let it go.
Yeah.
It sounds a bit romantic, like the inspiration came and everything. But it's an interplay of being in the sort of right frame of mind, digging into the right sounds, and then things happen.
Yeah.
And then I go with it.
Yeah.
This is what happened. So I didn't really dig into other requiems or
no, because there is a certain structure in the music, and I mean you bring certain new sounds into the mix while it's evolving. I really like that fact that it's evolving, but also that there are, especially towards the end, that you bring in these pulses or which bring
There's a synthetic voice in there, right?
Yeah, something. Well, I don't know.
And it disintegrates.
In a way, yeah.
Yeah. So that's probably what makes the pulses, because it's a loop.
Yeah.
Of a voice repeating the same phrase over and over again, and this sound is disintegrating, and it causes basically the whole work to disintegrate in the end.
Yeah.
So it dies.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, but it never becomes quiet. That's why I thought it was surprising, because if there is a loss, there's silence, probably. But it never happens. That's one of the things I thought was surprising about this work, compared to your other work, in which silent bits, longer or shorter, play quite an important role.
Yeah, absolutely.
But for me, silence is strongly connected to peacefulness, but not necessarily to death or loss, or because the loss of a loved one is a small tragedy, of course, or a big one, depending on who's been lost. And for me, that's a very noisy affair, emotional, mental. It's very noisy. So for me, this expression of
No, go on.
So the expression of loss for me is quite a noisy affair, and there's hardly any silence involved, which is
but why not make a noise CD then?
No, but I think what I don't know for sure, but what could have happened is that there's some sort of resolve of the anger or the sadness, and that you at a certain point come to terms with it, and that and I don't know if that is part of what you produced, or that you just wanted to be in that mood, and the end is in a certain way. At the end, you are in the same state of mind as at the beginning, because if we go back to the term of the requiem, and I don't say that's what you should have done, but the requiem is the music as part of a ritual, and the ritual is to there's someone has died, or there's loss, and at the end there is we say goodbye in his hand. So it's intro into Paradisum. But you didn't take it that literal.
No. I gave it my own. I gave it my own angle.
Yeah,
and for me, it's more like the expression of pain, sorrow, grief.
Yeah,
and coming to terms with that grief. So when Frans is asking, why did you not make a noise CD? This is for me quite a noise CD.
Well, indeed, there's a lot of sound constantly in your in this release, which to me sets it apart from a lot of your previous works, which is much more
work still to come, probably. Yeah.
Oh yeah, well, we don't know.
No, but it's true. There is it's different in the sense that there is less abruptness in this piece. It's more like a continuous flow. There's always sound, and there's less, maybe structure in the track. It's built up and it has a structure, but it's kind of subtle and
absolutely,
kind of mellow, maybe even.
Yeah,
which is strange because it deals with something heavy, whereas my regular work, so to speak, is probably more abrupt and more heavy to listen to. I don't know.
Yeah, well, in the sense that, like I said earlier, what when I listen to your music, I hear that you very deliberately structure your sounds. So
yeah.
The sounds have a very definite gestalt. So there's very low rumble, or there's a noise, or there is something silence and something breaks, and things like that. And that's the material with which you, at least that's what I hear you. I think I hear you doing is that's how you work with sound. Am I right?
Yeah, that's true. I construct, basically.
Yeah,
it's a collage.
Yeah,
or construction.
Yeah,
which is less so in. It's so funny because we're talking about rest in space and spaciousness in sound, but we're talking about reverb, and it's not a natural sound, but it's created by stretching sounds. So it's not real space. In my regular music, I perceive way more space than in this track. This track is more, I don't know, it's sort of engulfs you more than my regular music.
Yeah.
My regular music is more open, more like a building, a glass house or something that you can see the glass, but you can also see through it. You can see behind. So there's more depth, there's more layers maybe. So for me, that's more spacious than this release.
Yeah, no, I see what you mean. Yeah. I too have the idea that what you make normally are objects, which you can observe.
By listening, yes.
Yes, by listening.
Yes,
yeah.
But,
Jos, but if the other work is objects, how would you label this then?
This is much more something that goes into your head. I mean, that's what I what I liked when I listened to it the first time. I was really it was totally not what I would have expected from Roel. Because
same here.
Yeah, I listened. I put my headphones on. I listened to it, and actually, the sound is all around you. So what you say that the reverberation that's a big part of the sound is digital reverberation, but it's everywhere.
Yes.
So yeah, in that sense, it was surprising.
I was thinking it was all electronic work, some kind of your current modular setup doing something, and not something digital or with an acoustic sound source. I'm quite surprised to learn.
Yeah. The basis is basic. I think it's all acoustics. Probably halfway through there's some other sounds coming in, and the voice is an electronic voice. It's like a computer voice.
Yeah.
A vowel synth. So that's electronic, but yeah, especially in the beginning, the first part is based on these bell symbols. Yeah.
Okay, so I suggest we listen to a part of the new album, so the viewers can have an idea of what it sounds like. Yeah.
Okay.
that was another part of your new CD, Rest in Space. You have studied arts. You have a master's degree in arts. You studied at the Willem de Kooning Academy in Rotterdam. Can you tell a bit about your musical career? I mean, you already were making music when you were at the academy.
Yes.
And you continued making music after you finished you had your master's degree, and somehow you, I mean, have you produced art? I mean, visual arts?
I did for a while.
Yeah.
When I was studying it, and quite some years afterwards. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And there's an example in the background.
Yes, actually, it is.
Okay.
That one.
Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you. True,
but then
yes,
I mean, but music as was the thread in your life that continued.
Yeah.
And can you tell a bit about how you developed in your musical work?
I'll try to in a couple of words.
Mm-hmm.
As most young kids with a fascination for music, I wanted to play instruments myself, but I couldn't. So we started bands and made some music. This was 80s, so it was all kind of punky, new wave stuff. And at the same time, I was very interested in art and producing art. So for me, there has been a really long period that I actually couldn't decide which I wanted to do most. And since I didn't have the patience to study an instrument and really get to know an instrument, I thought I'll go to art school and do the music as well, but on my own terms.
Right.
And I've been doing art afterwards for quite a while as well, until I noticed that, well, I didn't sell anything.
Okay.
I couldn't make a living, so I had to start doing other stuff to make a living. So things became more and more difficult. Having a studio space, which was filling up with stuff that I couldn't sell or didn't sell, or kind of forced me to rethink a lot of things and to really put things to the test. I finally decided to do a master at the Willem de Kooning Academy, just to see if this art thing was the real thing for me. And during those 2 years, I actually discovered that I wanted to work with sound instead of image, which was quite an interesting discovery, because the whole phenomenon of sound art was not really known to me. I was still thinking in terms of music and art, but sound art, I don't know, those were objects that made sound, or but during this master's degree, I noticed that sound was way more important for me than image to work with as a material.
Right.
And ultimately, I decided to work with sound instead of image, which has been a big relief ever since. I think, for me.
Yeah.
And it's also been the start of, I don't know, of my getting to terms with being a sound artist instead of being a musician or a composer, or sound artist is fine. Yes.
Yeah.
And whether I make an installation or I compose or make a collage of sounds and release it on a CD, it has become irrelevant for me, which is fine, which is great.
Yes, except for that, I mean, I think that different media and different contexts of presentation of your music does make a difference. I mean, you also work you've done sound for film, and then and for performances and for dance and installations. I mean, there's one side where you are autonomous. You can make everything, and the other thing is that you work in the service of another or in collaboration with.
Yeah.
True. Can you tell a bit about how you experience both sides? I mean, let's concentrate on the collaborations. How does that work for you? Is it inspirational or?
Well, to start with, there's different kind of collaborations. I work with a Rotterdam-based video artist, Marco Dauma, who does videos. I saw his work. I was really, really impressed. We decided to work together to see how this would work out. And basically, we're both doing our own thing. But he listens to my tracks, I watch his work, and then it comes together. And it's could almost say it's both independent works, but they really enhance each other.
Right.
So that's a collaboration with the highest degree of freedom you can imagine.
Yeah, it's ideal, of course. Yeah.
Yes, which is it's really, really great. In other collaborations, I'm doing this sound design for a theater piece right now. It's completely different. It's the director has a theater piece in her mind, and she's looking for a specific presence of sound rather than a soundtrack or. So this is a completely different way of working. I have to listen to what she's saying, to what she's explaining.
Yeah.
And then I have to try to figure out or to translate her ideas into sound.
Yeah.
And it's a completely different way of working. But it's in no way it's less interesting or
no, I can imagine.
Yes.
In a certain way, it's a challenge, of course. Also.
Very much so, because it often. But she's really very honest, which is great because I have a great idea, I think, and I propose it. She says, "Oh no! This is way off. It's completely wrong."
Right.
Okay. Well, I'll go into the other direction.
Back to the drawing table.
Yeah. So in this dialogue, at a certain point, there's something that goes like, "Oh wait, I like this. Yes, I like this. Oh, so I can expand on this, and I can extrapolate. I can investigate, and then step by step, we get to the point that she says, this is really what I want, and this is what we will work further on.
Yeah.
So that's it's a process with a lot of dialogue.
Yeah.
Whereas with Marco, I'm just doing my thing and he's doing his thing, and it just it works together really well.
Yeah.
And then there's those are basically the two extremes, I think, and there's lots of things in between.
Yeah.
It's only been quite recently that I've started looking beyond my own things and writing, like in the liner notes on the Rest in Space CD. When did I ever do liner notes? Well, never, because I think the work should be exactly. So the work should be there. It should be itself. It should not be, I don't know. I've been recording in a swamp. I was bitten to death by mosquitoes, and no stories, no drama, no romantics. It's just the sound.
Yeah, it's a recurring theme. A recurring theme in this channel. We have been discussing the program music versus absolute music with Ralf Wojcicki in the past week as well, and but I mean, we'll get back to that discussion in a second part to the RLW.
Yeah. I think it's a very relevant discussion, but also it's it's also a matter of choice. Do you want to tell
do you think? Yeah. What's?
Oh yes, definitely. Of course.
Tell me.
I think it's if you have a story to tell, the audience will listen to what you have to say because it's interesting. If you've been to a swamp and mosquitoes have bitten you almost to death, and it's whoa, amazing.
Yeah.
Whereas if I just go there, I play my music and that's it, people go like, right, okay, so this has to be it. What's the point I'm trying to make? The point I'm trying to make is it should not be about my endeavors and my person. It should be about the work I do or the stuff
the
I
music,
make.
the story that the music itself tells. Actually,
yes, and there's hardly any story I'm telling in the music. So that's I know that my music is not. It's no easy listening. I'm very well aware of that. But that's not what I want. I want people to just sit down, concentrate, open themselves up for the sounds, and let the sounds do their work. And I'm quite convinced that if people do this, make the effort, that something will happen that they might not expect. Which yes.
Which brings us back.
If I tell them, if I would tell them before, they will be waiting for something to expect, which is not the right attitude to be listening to the music. Okay, so that's the point.
You got it.
Yeah, good.
But is then a thing about aesthetics? Is it about beauty?
Okay. Literally, it's about aesthetics, but not about beauty. Those are two things that have been confused at some point. Aesthetics is making use of your senses. In this case, it's very narrowed down to listening. But then again, I also expect people, because, what I'm doing when I'm really listening to music, I close my eyes. I just don't want to see anything. I just want to listen. So that's also using part of your sensory input system to block out something, which is also making use of it. And thereby opening up more of your other senses, the ears in this case. So aesthesis is senses. Use your senses. Let your senses be triggered by the stuff that I make in this case, but also other people's, of course. And see where it takes you. Just be open. Don't expect anything, but be there, listen, and see what happens. And if nothing happens, too bad. I expect something to happen.
Well, something does happen, of course.
I hope so.
I mean, I don't know what exactly the quote of John Cage was, like, listen to something for 5 minutes. If it's boring, listen to it 10 minutes. If it's boring, etc., etc., etc. No, but what I find interesting is that, in a sense, that brings us back to the concept of your tracks being objects, which you can observe. And I mean, if you go into a museum and you see a statue or something, a painting or something, in fact, that is the same experience. Like my experience is that the more time you spend on a piece of art, the more you get to grips with it. And sometimes it takes an hour, but then it starts talking to you. You start to communicate with it. I mean, it sounds a bit high flying, but in a sense that's my experience with, and that's also what I hear you saying about your works.
Yes, of course, it's a time-based art form.
Sure.
And it's so I kind of dictate the amount of time someone is spending with my work, which I think is great. The trouble in a museum is often that I notice myself that I don't really have what is it? Discipline or the quietness to really sit down and have a very open mind, because there's so much around which is impeding a very, very focused observance of an artwork.
Yeah, that's also the privacy. You don't have the privacy in a museum.
Exactly. In the case of a CD or a concert, actually as well, there's way more ability to create a focus for you as a listener.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And that's something I really, really appreciate about this kind of work, and being able to produce this kind of work. I've been overwhelmed by artworks. So some works are so stunning or so overwhelming that I don't know if you know the painter Morandi. It's an Italian painter, mid 20th century. His paintings are this big, and there's just a couple of bottles and some stuff on the table.
Flasks and
and they were hanging on a wall, and there was like huge paintings around. I saw this in the Bilbao Guggenheim. I looked in the space, I saw the small paintings.
Yeah.
I just was drawn
sucked into it. Yeah.
Yes, it's amazing. So some artworks really have this ability, this power to envelop you, and size doesn't matter in this case. Other works are huge, and I couldn't care less.
Exactly.
So it's also a matter of personal preferences and what are your sensibilities, or I don't know. And sometimes you really need to take your time. I think especially film sometimes really I really have to sit down and just let it go, and then get into the flow of the movie, and then something happens that doesn't happen with other media. So yeah, it depends on the medium. It depends on the circumstances you're watching it or listening to it. A lot of things determine how you, in the end, perceive a work of art.
Yeah.
And in the case of producing CDs or a carrier of sound which can be played at home, you have the luxury of creating your own small ambience in a room with the right speakers and the right temperature and maybe a drink or whatever. And there you go. Which is and it's highly democratic, because it's not expensive. Let's face it. And if you have Bandcamp, I mean, it's or whatever. So I think it's a great medium. Aside from the fact that I've also got a really strong it pulls at me still. So no.
But your music is sometimes sonically quite radical. So has a lot of quietness in there. As you say, it's democratic. But if you don't have the right equipment, you may lose something. How do you see that?
Yes, well,
you remember we once visited Bernard Günther at his place.
Yeah.
And this was the only time in my life I properly heard his music.
Okay. Because he had the right equipment.
He had the right equipment, yeah.
Well, mind you, my first works have been produced on speakers that were already then 20 years old and a very old amp. So, and that's the stuff I mastered my music on. So I suppose that most people will be able to listen to it.
I think so.
But then again, if you've got a small radio or whatever, it doesn't work. I think that's hardly the kind of situation you want to sit down in and listen.
Maybe not. No. But I was more referring to the fact that some of your music is quite dynamic. It can be very quiet, very loud, and it needs proper playback.
Yes, you're right. So I'm not saying that my music is very democratic. I'm saying that the medium that we produce the music on is quite democratic. A CD or a vinyl. It's easily available. It's not expensive, so it's not a very expensive art form as for the audience, for the public.
No, I agree.
And then again, the works that we make may not be very democratic because of their nature and not very accessible. Yeah,
it's quite eccentric. All that.
Yeah.
Well, I think we come to a conclusion. I don't know what the conclusion is, except for that I think this was a very interesting talk. I think your views on art.
Okay, let me just say one thing, because you mentioned that my works are objects.
Yeah.
Which sort of draws back to my art education, probably. I think you're right. I'm not considering the stuff I do music per se. But then again, I don't consider music to be like the ultimate art form. Any art form is okay. So when I make my works, I create them like I used to create a painting. I just begin somewhere, I make a sketch, and I build a subtle structure, and then I gradually fill it in. And sometimes it's like automatic writing. I begin somewhere, and then just takes it from there.
It flows. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
so objects is. I like the term. Yes.
But would you see resin space as an object then too?
Yes, definitely. I did a performance 2 months ago, I think, in an artwork of a Rotterdam-based artist, Mels van Zutphen. He put paper cones on speakers and send sine waves through them, so the cones would start flapping. I used this as an idea to create sounds that were quite equivalent to his original sounds, so sine waves and LFOs to create vibrations, which I then also sent to a sub, which was behind a wall somewhere, and I brought the whole space into resonation. So the space became the speaker, so to speak, the loudspeaker. Yeah, this is very much the way I think sound is a medium in itself, and it should be used properly in the right circumstances. Yeah. So live performance is always, if possible, it's quite site specific as well. I look at what kind of space are we dealing with in a regular theater space. Okay, I'm just taking a prepared set. But in this case, I really watched the space. I watched the installation, and I thought, okay, so here I can do some other things than usual. Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, do you also think that that performance was an object, a musical object, or a sound object? I mean, the way I can perceive your like recorded work, I can clearly see those as objects, like that. It's got a start, it's got an end, it's a bottom and a top, and it's got a certain texture and color. If you want to use those as well, and when you are in a live situation, do you consider that in the same manner, or is it?
Well, if I have the chance, I do. Yes. It kind of depends on the circumstances, but if there is a chance for me to prepare specifically for that situation, I will do it. And then it becomes like an object.
Yeah.
Because it has special ingredients that will not be used. Well, they can be used in another setting, but the combination of these specific ingredients can only happen then there.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it becomes like an object or a site-specific work. But there's always a difference, because an object is in existence, whereas a performance is existent. So it's becoming, and it's finished, and then it's done. So in that sense, it's not so much an object as a CD or
it's
a release.
Different. Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly. So that's different. So you have to be there to.
Yeah.
But especially now, there's always a beginning, a build up, certain ingredients that are used, and then a build down or a cut or whatever, and then it's well composed. Yeah.
Yeah, but what I think is interesting is that when we look at the structure of a performance, then it's like a ritual. So it goes from a start through certain steps towards an end.
Yeah.
Whereas if you regard a musical piece as an object, it's much more clearly defined about, and basically you would also be able to play it back in reverse or from the top, or you can look at it from various perspectives.
Yeah.
Whatever the time-based equivalence of that may be. But still,
let's face it, it won't happen. I mean,
No.
there is just a theoretical possibility,
Yeah,
but in
yeah.
reality,
No.
nobody will play it back
No.
and backwards because
No.
they have to record it and then we'll play it back.
until we are able to live in the fourth dimension, I think.
Exactly. Or in the 11th, depending on which theory.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Okay, so thank you, Roel, for this very interesting conversation. I think we are now in over an hour of recording time, which is the longest we ever.
Yeah, you have to cut it down, Jos, that's clear.
We'll cut it down to 20 minutes.
20 minutes.
But thank you anyway.
Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah.
Pleasure.
You're welcome. And we'll play another track of, I think, an earlier work to give the listeners or the viewers an idea of what you did before, the sonic objects. And I'll say goodbye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Goodbye.
Jos, wat ga je aan het draaien?
You can also listen to Thursday Afternoon Talks through Spotify and Apple Podcasts.